Hello, today I'm going to talk to you about comparing and ordering decimals. So we're going to start today off with a little problem for you to think about. Sam thought 0 and 3/10 was less than 0 and 15/100. Can you explain why he's wrong? If you're thinking that 0 and 3/10 is equal to 0 and 30/100, you would be correct. And of course, 0 and 30/100 is greater than 0 and 15/100. So Sam would be wrong because 0 and 3/10 is actually larger than 0 and 15/100. So there's two ways that we could figure out the answer to that problem. We could model with base 10 blocks, like we were using in previous lessons. We could rename each decimal with the same number of digits. So let's take a look. If we model with base 10 blocks, my 0 and 3/10 would look like the picture at the top. And my 0 and 15/100 would look like my picture at the bottom. Now looking at those two pictures, I can now definitely tell that 0 and 3/10 is larger or more than 0 and 15/100. I can also use a T-chart to compare those two decimals. And with the T-chart, you can see that my decimal point lies on that vertical line going up and down. My whole numbers, of course, are going to be on the left side if I have any, and my decimal digits will be on the right. And when I line those digits up, I can look that these two are the same, so I can cross those out. And if I'm comparing the digits that are in the tenths place, this digit is definitely larger than 1, so that means that this decimal is larger. Okay? The other thing that we want to do when we're comparing decimals like that is we want to fill in these missing holes, as I call them. So fill in the holes with zeros. So there would be a 0 there. So basically you're looking at 30/100 and 15/100. And 30/100 or 3/10 is definitely the larger decimal in that situation. Okay, so I've got some other decimals that we're going to compare in order here on this screen. And if you look at the first one, we have 0 and 23/100 and we have 0 and 16/100. So if I mark out the digits that are the same in that first column, and now I'm looking at the 2 and the 1. If I were going to pick the larger decimal in that particular scenario, this one would be the larger decimal out of those two. If we take a look at the next one, I notice that I have some holes that I need to fill in. So I'm going to put a 0 here to fill in this empty spot. So now I have the same number of digits in every column. I'm going to look at my first column, the whole number column, and mark this out because we have the same digits. And now I'm going to look at the next column, and I have a 0 and I have a 1. So if I were looking for the decimal that is larger out of those two, definitely 1 is larger than 0. So this case, the decimal 0 and 1/10 or 0 and 10/100 is larger than the decimal 0 and 4/100. Now let's say that you are given some decimals that you are to put in order. And let's say that we want you to put them in order from smallest to largest. We can still use a T-chart to do that. And we're still going to follow almost the same steps. We're going to fill in those holes with zeros. So now each one has the same number of digits and all of my columns are lined up. And if I'm going to put them in order from smallest to largest. Again, I'm going to look at this column and mark those out because they're the same. And I'm looking at the first column, and I'm looking for the smallest digit. Well, I have 2 decimals that have zeros. So now I need to go to the next place. And now I'm looking at a 4 and a 0. So this decimal right here is going to be my smallest. This one would be my second smallest. And then this one would be my largest. So if I were going to put those decimals or write them out in order, I would write them, this one being the smallest, this one being the next smallest, and this one being my largest. And that's how I would do that. Okay, we've got another set on this screen. And notice my first column, I have all 1s. So I'm going to mark that out because those are all the same. And we're going to look at that first column after the decimal point. And I've got 3 of them that has zeros. So then I'm going to go to this column. And it looks like this one's going to be my first. And guess what Mrs. Deom forgot to do? Forgot to plug in my hole there. Okay. Which one's going to be my second? Ooh, those 2 are the same, aren't they? Okay, so both of those, they'll come one right after the other. And then, of course, this one would be my last. Okay, so little trick there, huh? So we had 1 and 30 hundredths, and we had 1 and 3 hundredths. Actually, that's 30 thousandths, excuse me. And then as we filled in that other 0, they became the same decimal, 1 and 30 thousandths. All right. So to summarize, you learned 2 methods to order and compare decimals. The first one was to model with base 10 blocks, and the second one was to rename so that they all had the same number of digits in the same columns using T-charts. So in my opinion, I think the T-charts are the better way to go. It's a lot faster. You're not always going to have base 10 blocks that you can pull out, and it's going to take you a little bit longer to draw pictures and try to do all of that. But it's up to you. You can use whichever method you're more comfortable with. But T-charts would be my first choice if it were me. So you decide whichever one you are most comfortable with. Make sure that you write down any questions that you have before you come to class, and I will be happy to help you when you get there. Thanks for watching.